is Veena from Pat a Cake, the channel that's about baking and much more. Okay then, let's get cracking with today's recipe. Welcome back! At the outset, I have to admit that I hadn't planned for a Neuri or Karanji video. But after I got a request for baked Neoreo, I thought more of you could be interested in this recipe too. And so I developed a new recipe for a crisp, buttery and tasty outer covering for the baked Neories. My Neories also have an additional design element, making it even more interesting for you to try them out. So here's my original recipe, which you'll be watching first right here at Pat a Cake. Let's check out the ingredients for today's recipe. For the outer covering, we'll need all-purpose flour or maida, butter, sugar and chilled water. And for the filling, we need fresh grated coconut, sugar, milk powder, milk, ground cardamom, chopped nuts and salt. The link to the ingredients list and the recipe details is included in the description box below. We'll begin by preparing the outer covering. This is 1 1/4 cups of maida. Let's aerate and loosen it a bit. And here I have 50 grams, half of a 100-gram packet of chilled salted butter that I have just taken out from my fridge. Let's slice it into fine slivers. The outer covering we are making will be buttery and crisp, somewhat like pie dough, but with a much lower butter content. Let's add this cold butter to the flour and start mixing the two with a fork. You don't need to, but the mixing could also be done in a food processor or mixer. I personally find it quite easy to do the mixing by hand. At this stage, I'll add in 1 1/2 tablespoons of powdered sugar and continue working on the flour mix with the fork. Now that the butter has been broken up into smaller pieces, I'll switch to rubbing it into the flour with my fingertips till the mix begins to look like coarse breadcrumbs. I have some chilled water here from the fridge and we'll add it to the flour mix very carefully and a little at a time till the dough just starts coming together. I'll begin by adding 1 tablespoon. And then add the second one. By now we can see the formation of small clumps of dough. But these are not yet sticking together. So I'll add half a tablespoon more of water and continue mixing everything. Now let's add just around a 1/4 tablespoon of water. As you can see, we now have larger moist clumps of dough. Let's check if these can be brought together into a tight ball. At this stage, we have to just press and gather the dough together without trying to knead it. In all, I've added 2 3/4 tablespoons of water to make this dough. You might need a little more or a little less than this. I'll now pack the dough into a disc, put it into a sealable plastic bag and keep it in the fridge for around an hour. You could also wrap it in cling film or wax paper. While this is cooling inside the fridge, we'll prepare the filling. Here I have 1 1/2 teaspoons of butter in a non-stick pan. Now let's add in around a 1/4 cup of almonds and cashew nuts and saute these on medium heat for around 3 minutes. To the same pan, I'll now transfer 3/4 of a cup of fresh grated coconut. To this, I'll add finely ground sugar. I had ground 6 1/2 tablespoons of granulated sugar with around 1 teaspoon of cardamom seeds. Now let's add 3 tablespoons of milk powder and 2 tablespoons of milk and a quarter teaspoon of salt. And give all these ingredients a stir. I'll set the heat to medium and cook the filling mix for around 5 to 7 minutes, stirring continuously. As the sugar melts, the consistency of the mix will change and become looser. But we'll have to keep stirring and stop heating the filling only when the droplets of liquid have evaporated and it is just slightly moist. We don't have to make it completely dry. As it cools, it'll dry up some more. Here's the cooled filling. This is how it should be. It should be able to stick together and shouldn't be dry and crumbly. I had chopped the toasted nuts and will now add these to the filling along with around 2 tablespoons of raisins. Let's mix this up. Now here's our chilled dough. You could make around 8 to 12 neuries with this depending on their size. I like small dainty neuries, so we'll make 12 today. I'll cut the dough into 2 parts and put one back in the fridge till I've made the first 6 Neoreo with the other part. Let's cut this dough into 6 portions and roughly shape each one into a ball. This dough can be rolled out between sheets of parchment paper or butter paper as we call it in India. I'll use a folded sheet, like this. The dough should be rolled out into a slightly elongated shape and be a little thicker than the covering for fried neuries. I'll roughly mark the filling out into quarters and use each quarter for filling 3 neuries. You'll need a tablespoon of filling for each neuri. Let's place some filling on the lower half of this dough disc we have rolled out. You could use the back of a teaspoon handle or a Q-tip or earbud to moisten the edge of this lower half. Let's fold the other half of the disc over the filling and press down the edges of the neuri. Let's trim the edge with a pastry cutter and use a fork to press a simple design all around the curved edge. I'll now transfer the neuri to a very lightly greased baking tray. If you find it a hassle to roll the dough using a butter paper sheet, you could use a light dusting of flour instead. I've tried both ways and found no appreciable difference between the baked neuries afterwards. Now a gentle reminder here. I'll be posting new videos around once a week. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel as yet, I urge you to do it right away. The notification bell will alert you every time I post another one of my quick and tasty recipes. I'll now show you how you could add a further decorative touch to the Neoreo using the scraps of dough we had cut off. You'll have to press the scraps together into a cylindrical shape and break this into 6 small bits. I'll flatten one into a thin disc, make 5 small equidistant cuts around the edge, and then shape each of the 5 sections into a petal to make a small flower. Moisten the back with water and lightly press it onto the top of a neuri. Then use the broader end of a skewer to mark the center of the flower. I'll now show you 2 more shapes, but you could make any other designs of your choice. Here's one I made with just 4 cuts. Now let's make a little angel. Okay, now that I've finished making all 6 neuries, I'll keep them in the fridge for around 15 minutes. They should be cold before we put them into the oven to bake. Having completed making the next 6 neuries too, I've moved them to the fridge and taken out the first batch, which is now ready for baking. I lightly brush the tops of the neuries with melted ghee before transferring them to my oven that's been preheated to 180 degrees centigrade or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 10 minutes since I put the first 6 neuries into the oven to bake. Since they'll be done in a few more minutes, I've taken the next 6 neuries out of the fridge and am now brushing their tops with melted ghee to get them ready for baking. Now here's our first batch of baked neuries. They took 17 minutes to bake. The neuries are done when they start changing color and develop small pale brown patches on top. They'll also feel firm to the touch and be light brown underneath. I'll now transfer these to a cooling rack. Here are all the 12 neuries we made today. So now let's cut one and see how it looks inside. The crust is crisp, light and flaky, and the tasty filling slightly moist. Believe me, you have to taste these Neoreo to experience how unbelievably scrumptious they are. So do try making these. I assure you, you'll be glad you did. Hope you enjoyed today's video and do stop by again for yet another quick and tasty recipe. Till then, take care. Happy cooking!